All right, folks, we've got a really exciting program today. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And we have as our moderator today our own Mark Wright. And I'm sure everybody knows Mark. He's the anchor on King 5 News in the morning. So take it away, my friend.
Thank you, President Tom. And our panelists are going to be getting seated here on stage. This is going to be a memorable program today. I've got my notes out here. Today's program is about child sex trafficking in Seattle. A lot of people don't know that this is a problem here in Seattle, but it is. And today's program is dedicated to ending it. Seattle's problem with child sex trafficking is that it's a hidden problem. It's not easily seen, but once you talk to the right people, and once you look in the right places, you will see how pervasive a problem this is. So today we're going to hear from 4 people who have dedicated themselves to ending this problem. Each is going to talk about the problem from a unique perspective, but there's one thing that really unites these 4 people, and that is a courage that I haven't seen in a long time. Each one of these people we're about to hear from is courageous in their own way, in their own sector of our city, and I'm humbled by the courage that they possess, and I think all of us will be inspired to be more courageous in our own lives. I'd like to begin today's program by hearing from a woman passionate about ending child sex trafficking in Seattle, Paula Clapp, and an amazing group of women 4 years ago decided they were not going to sit on the sidelines when it came to this issue. They formed a nonprofit called Stolen Youth, which funds a number of agencies and activities dedicated to ending child sex trafficking. Many of you know Paula and her husband Bill. They've dedicated their lives to philanthropy here in Seattle and around the world. It's been a treat for me to get to know Paula. She is literally one of the most humble and gracious people I've ever met, yet she possesses a fierceness that is in there, let me tell you. Paula is going to take a couple of minutes right now to talk about Stolen Youth. And each of the panelists as well. She knows these 3 panelists extremely well. She works with them closely in a number of venues and ways. So please give a warm Seattle Rotary welcome to Paula Clapp. Hold the mic if you want, or you can take it off.
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Mark, for the very, very kind introduction. My name is Paula Clapp. I just want to take a moment, just a moment, to look around the room and stand in gratitude for all the wonderful work that all of you do. Your passion and your commitment of being of service inspires me. Thank you. I'm here today representing Stolen Youth. It's a nonprofit started 4 years ago by 12 Seattle women. Our mission is to raise awareness and raise funds to help direct services of our local nonprofits who rescue and recover our community's prostituted children and youth. Yes, our communities, children and youth who are forced into prostitution. This heinous crime is happening in our own backyard. Most people think that the sexual exploitation of children happens around the world. However, right here in King County, children as young as 12 years old are forced into prostitution and trapped in a cycle of violence. The 12 women and I decided we wanted to do something. We saw a need in our community. We wanted to help our kids, and we call them our kids. We feel that this is the human rights issue of our time, the buying and selling of children for sex. We learned that in King County, there are upwards of 500 local children and youth that are bought and sold every year. 1 in 3 teens who run away from home will be lured towards prostitution within 48 hours of leaving their home. In a recent online sting, an ad was placed for a 15-year-old girl to be bought for sex, and within 2 hours, she received 250 calls for sex from buyers. You know, I have to say, I say these statistics, and I'm shocked. I can see the looks on your faces, and my heart goes out to these kids who are trapped and forced into prostitution. 4 years ago, our dream was to build a safe house for our youth. We wanted to provide a shelter with wraparound services like counseling, medical care, job training, high school completion. A place where they could come and stay and know they were safe, and they could heal and move forward with their lives. After educating ourselves and seeking the advice of experts in our city, we learned that we could better serve our kids by raising funds and awareness to support our local nonprofits. But the dream of having a safe house, a home for these kids, still lives on. Stolen Youth is run by an all-volunteer board. We have a coalition of nonprofits that we support. These nonprofits are nonprofits that support our local youth and educate our community, and they demonstrate best practices. We call our nonprofits our coalition. And last year, with the help of two of our speakers, Mark Brettman and Noel Gomez, we identified 121 sexually exploited youth and provided a safe shelter and a continuum of services, including case management and job training. And in Mars Group, you'll hear from Mars shortly, over 1,000 hoteliers, business owners, and law enforcement were trained to recognize and report victims of sex trafficking. The first statewide coalition effort was also started by Bobby Bridge and her organization. We are extremely proud of what our community has done to help raise funds to support our children and youth. By pulling together, we can and have made a difference in young people's lives. We are so grateful to be here today to speak to you. And now I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panel. Mark Brettman is on my left, and she is the founder of BEST, Business Ending Slavery and Trafficking. It's a nonprofit that aligns and equips leaders to use the power of business to prevent human trafficking. Her organization, as I mentioned, is a member of Stolen Youth Coalition. In the center is Dan Satterberg. He's elected King County Prosecuting Attorney in 2007. And before that, Dan was a trial attorney in the criminal division, where he spent rotations in the special assault and drug unit. As a prosecuting attorney, Dan changed the way we look and value our young people who are arrested for prostitution. They are no longer criminals. They are victims. And Noel Gomez is co-founder of Organization for Prostitution Survivors. She is a survivor, an advocate, case manager, public speaker, and teacher. Her organization is also part of Stolen Youth Coalition. It is my honor to present the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paula, thank you very much for setting the table. I told you these guys were rock stars up on the stage, didn't I? This is going to be a really interesting afternoon. So thanks, first of all, to the panelists for being here. Dan, I wanted to start with you. You've been intimately involved in this issue for a while now. People hear the term human trafficking, and I think it doesn't really make sense to a lot of people. What is human trafficking? What defines it, and what does the law say about it?
Well, human trafficking is a broad topic. What it means for us here today on this beautiful day, this perfect Earth Day in Seattle, is it means that between 300 and 500 children under the age of 18 are being marketed for sex right now on one of almost 100 different websites in the Puget Sound area. And a recent survey by Arizona State University estimated that 8,000 men a day go on those websites and look to buy sex. And many of them look to buy sex specifically from underage kids. In fact, they charge more, make more money the younger the girl is. So it's a real thing. It's a very dark part of our community, but it's happening in 2015 in Seattle, Washington. And so we want to let you know about some of the things that we're trying to do to raise awareness and to really make sure people understand that human trafficking isn't just importing people from other countries. It's mostly domestic victims, young girls who run away from home and quickly find themselves surrounded by men who want to exploit them. And there are four different, if you could put the slide, there are four different specific entities involved here. And part of changing culture is to talk very carefully and use careful words when we talk about who we're talking about. The first entity, of course, is the prostituted person. And I use that term intentionally because prostitute and words that are worse than that tend to dehumanize the person and tend to make us think that they're beyond redemption and we shouldn't care about them. But the prostituted person, on average, gets into prostitution at around age 13 or 14. And so even when they attain the age of majority, nothing magic happens at age 18 that makes it any less horrible or less exploitive. But most of the people who are adults in prostitution started when they were minors. The second, and as Paula said, we are starting to now realize that those are women, girls, and some boys in need of services. And they don't need criminal convictions. They don't need to be sent to jail. They need to be helped. A survey shows about 9 out of 10 people in prostitution desperately want out, and they want services, yet the services don't typically exist. The second entity is the pimp, and pimps are men who are manipulative. Often they'll have more than 2 or 3 girls that they sell. They literally will lock them up in a hotel room and let an endless stream of buyers come in, or they will deliver them to the doorstep. They are manipulative, they are violent, they find all sorts of ways to make these young girls do what they say, and they take all the money. We've been for a long time focused on pimps, and we have strong laws in our state, and we get long sentences. The one area where we've never had an emphasis is on the buyers. And I don't use the word John because I think John is kind of comical, and I think it kind of undervalues the damage that these men do. And I also know a lot of guys named John who are pretty decent guys, so it's not fair to them. So, but the buyers, without the buyers, there wouldn't be the exploitation, there wouldn't be the violence, there wouldn't be the trauma inflicted on these young kids. And so for a long time, the buyers got off easy. They got a diversion or a John school. That's changing in our county. Now we are insisting, in partnership with city attorneys' offices throughout the county, we're insisting on a different approach, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the fourth entity is you, because this is happening in your businesses. The men who are going online, and you know, the internet's been the game changer in all of this. Men who would never think about walking down Aurora at midnight have no problem going on the internet and a couple clicks away from arranging a commercial sexual exploitation of a minor. It's happening. The peak hours for internet use on these websites is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. These men are at work in your businesses arranging dates for later on. So what can businesses do? What can you as opinion leaders do to help us change the way we think about prostitution and prostituted youth?
Dan, thank you. I want to get more into, in just a little bit, just some of the specific changes in the law that have transformed. That was a really good overview about the landscape. Noel, I want to talk to you. I've looked at your bio, and it's just amazing the work that you're doing now and the education that you're getting and the good that you're doing with young people and survivors. Take me back to the very beginning when all of it began for you. What was your home life like? What was life like? How did you end up getting into prostitution?
Okay, so my story is, I have heard over and over and over and over again from the youth that I work with. My story is not original. It is not anything new. This has been going on for a long time here. Is this domestic sex trafficking? So I came from a background, my family was an alcoholic father, very abusive. There was some most girls who get caught up in this are also sexually abused as well. So there's all kinds of things that happened, and I ended up getting pregnant when I was 15, and then asked to leave my house. So basically I was just out in the streets after that. And my son went with his father's family because I obviously didn't have anywhere to take him or care for him. So I just kind of lived in the streets and with people and wherever and hung out. And, I met this really great guy, who basically, what these predators look for with these young girls is girls who, aren't at home, who are running from something, who feel vulnerable or who are very vulnerable, who don't have anything, who don't have, a lot of good relationships with their families. And so, I met somebody, and I can remember the first questions he asked me now was, where did I live and where was my family? And looking back, I realize now that he was figuring out what was going on with me. And he seemed to have it, everything, money and all the things that a young girl thinks is great, and, was paying for me to get my nails done and my hair done and going to dinners and stuff like that. And I felt really special, and that this person really cared for me. And, he turned out to be a pimp. And that's normally the grooming process that they do with these young girls. He became very violent, very, very violent. So, there was really no way to escape. I ran away a few times. He would find me, handcuff me, throw me in a trunk, threatened to kill my child, a number of things.
And this went on for how long?
Well, I was in the life for 15 years. So I ended up, so this is what happens, is that we have all of these youth that this is happening with, okay? I work with these youth every day. Almost every young woman that I meet with now has been exposed to this life. What was your question?
What ends up happening?
What ends up happening is that
8 out of 10 go from being victimized youth to
victimized adults. So what happens is that they don't get the services that they need. They don't, have a safe place to go, like this safe house that we're dreaming about. They don't have those resources, and sometimes can't get out. And they turn 18, and then they're adults, and then the cycle just continues.
Did the guy that victimized you, was he ever caught? What happened to him?
Yeah. He was actually arrested in Miami in 2000. I think he was on the front page of the Seattle Times, actually. In 2000, he was arrested in Miami for trafficking youth, and he got 30 years in federal prison, and then he was actually murdered in federal prison. So
I've heard that, Dana, maybe you can speak to this, and Noel, maybe you can speak to this as well, but I've heard that these guys make obscene amounts of money doing this. How much money do some of these guys make?
All of them have a quota. So when the girl has to go to work, she has to make a certain amount of money a day. So whatever his quota is, is $1,000, $1,500 a day, whatever it is, you have to work until you get that amount of money. And if he decides to not let you come home and rest, then that's his decision, and you have to stay out and continue to work until he says you can come back. So these guys are making, depending on how many girls they have working, depending on their quota, at least, $5,000, $10,000 a day, some of them. Yeah.
There was a shift in your life when you got out of what's called the life. And the person that I'm looking at today is strong and confident and making a difference in the lives of others. When did that turning point happen for you?
Well, I'm glad you see me that way. Thank you. Turning point. Well, it just nothing was planned. It just, I got out, eventually, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. The majority of my friends that were youth when we started are dead now, or they look about 80 years old and they're on Aurora and they have no teeth, and these were all beautiful 15-year-old girls at one point that had a life ahead of them, and this is where they're at now. But for me, I just knew that I wanted to get away, and I wanted to get away on my terms, and I didn't want to end up out there and getting killed by one of these buyers, because that's pretty much what happens, most of the time when you stay in too long. And I ended up getting out, and I just started working with girls and women because there was no services. And so I just started giving out my phone number and just started working with girls and women who are suffering out here. And I started working in the juvenile detention as an advocate with these the specific population. So I've, been around for a number of years, and I've watched some of the girls I've worked with, that I've known since they were 12 years old that were being trafficked. Some of them are still stuck, and they're 16, 17, 18 now, and some of them aren't.
I want to go back at the end to some of the other work that you're doing, but I want to talk with Mar. Your organization that you founded, I guess you're the executive director, co-founder of the group, BEST, Businesses Ending Slavery and Trafficking. There's a business component to all of this, clearly. When did you come to the realization that that's something that you wanted to take on as your life work?
Well, I was in academics for 10 years prior to this, teaching in theology, philosophy, and ethics, and realized that I was spending all my time either teaching or in a room with the door closed, writing obscure articles that 5 people probably ever read. And I thought, I really want to do something more meaningful. I was always very interested in social justice. Some of my students were involved in trafficking work, which is how I learned about it. And so when I had the opportunity to change careers, I started exploring this area and how we could get involved and how we could actually stop the crime from taking place in the first place. Because to hear a story like Noel's and all the women and girls that she works with is devastating. So we really started looking at how can we prevent this? And that's where, as a group of people came together to talk about that question, we realized the group that is really missing from the response in our area is the business community. And they have an incredibly key role in prevention. So out of that conversation, BEST was started.
Take us through. I know you have a couple of slides that take us through the points that you're making. So I guess what all of us are wondering is, what role does business play? Take us through the dynamic of that.
Sure. So first, sex trafficking sex traffickers use business premises to commit their crimes. So the most obvious premises is a hotel situation, which is where the majority of sex trafficking crimes happen. We did a study looking at crimes that had been prosecuted in King County involving sex trafficking, both of children and of women. So that sex trafficking isn't only of children, it also is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel adults into prostitution. And so we looked at where this was happening in our community. In the police report, 63% mention hotels as the places where these crimes were occurring or being involved in some way. Though when I talk with the man who prosecutes a lot of these cases, he says, I've never seen a case in King County that didn't involve a hotel. So, and this ranges, when we looked at the hotels, it ranges from the hotels on Aurora to wonderful hotels in the heart of downtown Seattle and Bellevue, the high-end luxury hotels. It takes place across the board. So we started working with the Washington Lodging Association and developing resources to be able to train hotels, and saw dramatic changes that took place in a really short time in our lodging industry, from 8% who had identified trafficking cases prior to our training to 44% having identified cases after our training within a very short period. So we're really excited. I mean, the hotel industry just embraced this and took this on and said, yes, we want to make a difference in our community. Another premises where this can happen, any type of premises, like a parking lot of a business, or Westlake Mall is a place that is well known for having trafficking happening in its area. Police did a sting operation. The Seattle PD went down and did an undercover cop dressed like a female, was approached within 45 minutes. She looked like a young girl. Within 45 minutes, a pimp approached her to try to recruit her into the life down in our downtown corridor. So any type of premises is at risk. Another risk is that sex traffickers use products and services of businesses to commit their crimes. So this could be websites, this could be ports, this could be buses, this could be airlines. So any products or services that a company offers can be at risk of being used by traffickers. Finally, unfortunately, it's hard to say that employees in reputable businesses in our area are buying sex from trafficking victims. So we did a study looking at who the employers are. We looked specifically at the men who had bought sex from children, and looked at who the employers are. And don't worry, I'm not going to show you the employers, but I am going to show you the sectors. So I'm sure you're all shaking in your boots. But these are the sectors. It's construction industry. It's IT industry. We actually have 7% of our working population in King County is in the IT sector, but 13% are buyers. And so manufacturing, military, retail, both online and other forms of retail, transportation. So you can see no industry is immune from employees being involved and engaged in this activity. And it poses an incredible risk to businesses when employees are involved in this. To the reputation of the employers, no employer wants to see one of their employees, having been caught, and this being in the Seattle Times, being caught for buying children. It also creates a hostile work environment for men and women who are uncomfortable with this kind of activity. It also affects worker productivity. So Dan Satterberg just mentioned that 2 p.m., we did an early study, and it looks like 2 p.m. is one of the top times a day that people are soliciting, which is a serious worker productivity issue. Also the fact that they can be soliciting from their desktops or company-owned mobile phones. We also did a study and found that 3 out of 4 prostituted people actually said that they'd visited their clients on the workplace, like in the workplace. So this poses a huge legal risk to businesses. So it certainly is not in the interest of businesses to have this kind of activity take place.
If you think it wouldn't affect you as the CEO, just look at the head of the DEA, who is resigning now because it's come out that her agents routinely hired prostitutes for parties, and it makes the entire agency look terrible. So we've had meetings with the county executive, and King County is going to be among the leaders to stand out and to say to our employees that our values are different than, and they're inconsistent with people who would go out and exploit another person for sexual gratification. So we're going to take a strong position on that. It could lead to discipline and termination if one was to be caught.
Dan, I want to talk a little bit more about enforcement. There have been some changes in the law that discuss, that really, human trafficking is now a crime you can be charged with. But give me an idea of what you think currently the enforcement, is enough being spent on enforcement, is enough being done when it comes to enforcement to really curb the problem? Because it sounds like what I'm hearing is online, this is almost just the tiny tip of the iceberg, and all this other activity is going unpunished.
Well, there's no way we're going to arrest everybody who's out doing this, but what we can do is increase the risk, because for so long, men who were looking to buy sex online felt there was no risk at all to them. A couple of months ago, we announced something we called Buyer Beware, and it's a concerted effort, a grant that we got from a place called Demand Abolition, one of the Hunt Family Foundations. It includes partnerships with Noel's group, the Organization for Prostitution Survivors, and Mars Group Best, and academics and others to start to try to change attitudes. And one way you do it is by taking action. And so the Seattle Police Department has been the leader, but there are 8 other suburban police departments who do this as well, who will put out an ad on Backpage.com or one of those groups. That's where Paula's statistic, about 200 to 250 solicitation responses came in within an hour to putting it on. And then they go offline and they start to text. And the police officers are always very careful to say, I'm 15, is that okay with you? And some of the men will disappear, but others will tend to get even more excited and aggressive about it. And so what you see on this bar chart, it's very hard to read, but the blue line is the number of minors, juveniles that we used to prosecute in juvenile court for prostitution, and the red line is the number of buyers. As you can see, we have flipped this. We completely flipped the bet. The one person that we charged, who was a minor last year, we did so because her caseworker and her parents and everybody said, please, that's the only way we're going to get her attention. So it's a team effort now when we use the criminal justice system, because what young women who get caught up in this life don't need is a criminal conviction. What they do need is help and services. What the men need is to know that this is not okay. And what happened, we do have tough laws in our state, and a commercial sexual exploitation of a minor actually carries with it a presumptive prison sentence of 24 months. What we do in our office with that pie chart that you saw of mostly upper middle class, educated, mostly white men who come to us is we make them go through a sexual deviancy evaluation, because we want to know who we're dealing with. Is this the next Gary Ridgway, or is this a guy who, who is this? Many of them admit to having bought sex 1,000 or more times, and they finally got caught. And then, so if they plead guilty, and if they write a $5,000 check to a special fund, half of which goes to victim services, half of which goes to law enforcement to continue this, then we allow them to plead guilty to promoting prostitution in the 2nd degree, felony communication with a minor for immoral purposes. They have to register as a sex offender and do 8 months in jail. That's the deal. If they want to go to trial, they're going to go to prison. It's a tough, tough approach, and it's starting to have a ripple effect. So, but we can't possibly arrest all the men who are out there looking for a 15-year-old girl. If it wasn't a police decoy, they would have found a real 15-year-old girl. So this isn't a crime that we're inventing. It's just one that we're stepping in front of the real victim with a police officer. What I think has to happen, though, is all of us working together to say, in Seattle, Washington, 2015, this is not okay.
Noel, I want to ask you, when it comes to resources and what these young people need, someone told me a statistic, something like nationwide there might be 100 beds in safe houses for young people being exploited, which is just shocking. When you think about in Seattle, 500 maybe or more are victimized. What, in your mind, do we need to do as a community to reach out and make sure that these young people get the help that they need?
Okay, so just let me say real quickly that, I like I said, I meet with these girls. I have really close relationships with many women and girls in Seattle who are going through this, and I'm just going to tell you that there are 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds being sold every single hour of every single day on the internet here in Seattle. All day long, all night long. I work with them, they tell me, I know. So this, there's a lot of resources for people who are internationally trafficked. There's not resources for our domestically trafficked children. We need to really pay attention to this and as a community, and as everybody out here. I just hope that you educate other people that you meet about the situation that's going on here, because it's very, very, very serious. It's very serious. I have friends whose daughters are missing and have been missing for a long time. Educate, talk to people, get involved in the movement. This is a movement we're doing here. Get involved with us, volunteer, teach young boys how to be men, how to be men, how to be in touch with themselves, so they don't have to continue to be in pain too. But really be aware of what's happening and educate the children, and start young.
So if you could, if you could wave a magic wand and create something, what would it be? Like a safe house or a government agency that really staffs outreach workers, or what would it look like?
Oh yeah, we definitely, and like I said, I meet with these girls all the time, and there's really, I can't say to them, you know what, I can get you into this house where you're gonna be safe, where he's not gonna find you, where you can go right now and I can take you there. There's not a place like that. So I meet with her and we talk, and I buy her a Frappuccino, and she tells me about everything that's going on in her life, and we try to go through the different options and how we can change things. But if I could say to her, you can leave right now, and I have a place for you to go, that would change lives. That would change lives. And we would have less over 18, 30-year-old, 50-year-olds out here that are traumatized for their whole entire lives. We would have less of that. We would be able to help these girls, because it's not something that we can wait to do. I have to get them right now, because I might not see them next week, because they could be gone. So
I want to make sure we have maybe 5 minutes for a Q&A, because I know that some of you have some questions. But before we get to that, just bear with me a sec. I'm going to ask each of you in about 30 seconds, what's the takeaway? What do you want all of us to know today as we leave here? And Mara, I want to start with you. What do you want us to know in about 30 seconds?
Sure. So we have created, worked with a lot of businesses and leaders in our area to create an alliance of employers, and associations like Rotary are welcome to be part of that, who can help us to change the norms around trafficking. I can't go into detail on what that looks like to be able to change that alliance, but Dan has mentioned that King County is working on becoming part of this alliance, and I'd like to invite Rotary to become part of this, and any of your businesses to become part of this alliance. I'd be happy to meet with you. I also wanted to let you know that Rotary International is working on has a child sex trafficking group, action group, which you're welcome to join as a part of your organization. I'm going to present. Rotary International is doing a huge World Summit in Atlanta with the Carter Center, and I'm going to present at that. And I was very excited to be able to talk here first. Before I invite those folks to be part of our alliance, I wanted to invite you to be part of our alliance as part of the Seattle Rotary. So there are some specific things you can do in addition when you book a hotel for an event like this. Put it in the contract, ask some questions, make sure that they are training their staff. I do know the Sheraton has access to outstanding training through their ownership group, and so you can be very happy working here. You can also educate your Rotarians, continue to keep this education going on, and there are a number of other things to do, but I know it can be short.
Okay. Thank you, Mar. Dan, what's the takeaway in your perspective?
Well, I'm going to grab Noel's line. This is a movement, and it's a start for us to recognize that we together have the power to shape attitudes, to shape consequences, to help those who are in need of help. And we're just getting started. And so many people will tell, even well-meaning people will say, well, you know, prostitution, it's the world's oldest profession. There's nothing you can do about it. And I think they say that as a way because they don't want to acknowledge the real dark side of it. And the truth is, it's not the oldest profession. The oldest profession was slavery, and we're against that.
Noel?
Yeah, just, maybe to maybe think about how you really think about this issue and who you are and where you are in this. And, all of these girls were children and had dreams. And none of them dreamed for this. None of them. I promise you that. And they're somebody's child. Oftentimes they're mothers. Oftentimes, they're a person. They're a person that has feelings and that has dreams and hopes that have been squashed by these predators and these offenders. This is not a victimless crime. I don't care how old the girl is. She was once a traumatized kid. This is not a victimless crime.
Thank you. And I want to give Paula the last word. What's the takeaway from your perspective, Paula?
Is this on? Can you?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Being together, hearing your thoughts, we can have extra meetings with you, circles of conversations with anybody else who's interested in learning more. I mean, you've heard an amazing presentation from our panel. And if you want to learn more, please reach out to us, stollenyouth.org and Mars. I think we're all listed in your program. But again, as Mars said and Noel said and Dan, sharing the information and educating youth, friends, grandparents can talk to their grandkids, neighbors and friends. We have a luncheon next Wednesday, unfortunately on a Wednesday, but it's our fundraiser, our third one, and we're very excited. It's going to be at the Sheraton, and we'd love anybody that could come to join us. You're all welcome. And thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Dan, Mar, and Noel.
Thank you. And, at the outset, I mentioned, I'm just blown away by the courage you guys have. I mean, I'm floored. Keep up the good work. Keep up the courage. Keep fighting. And it's making a difference. It really is. Please give just thank these guys for what they're doing, if you would.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.